Hi. Listening to our television channels, reading newspapers, and just following up on social media conversations, one can easily imagine that Kenya has gone to the dogs. The negative publicity about our economy, the negative publicity about our leadership. There is so much that can get you and I worried. The loss of jobs. And the question that comes to mind is this: is there hope for Kenya? Is there hope for Kenya? Well, stay tuned. My name is Patrick Kuchio, the head of missions at Christ is the Answer Ministries, right here in Nairobi, Kenya. How should we respond to the crisis we are faced with as a country? Because we truly are in the eye of a storm. When we look at our national debt that has skyrocketed, tripled in about 3 years, when we look at the many people who are losing jobs, when we look at the hard times that Kenyans are faced with, the companies that are closing down, when you follow the news from our media houses, you can very easily get overwhelmed and ask yourself, is there really hope for Kenya? How should we respond to the challenges we are faced with as a people, as a nation, as individuals, as communities, as a community, as families? The Bible does tell us in Romans chapter 1 verse 17 that the just shall live by faith. The just shall live by faith. It is about time that we summon our spiritual connection with God. Those of us who are not connected with God yet, those of us who are connected with God, it's about time we realize that God is counting on you and I as representatives of His kingdom to live by faith. You see, faith is not a leap in the dark. Some people have accused those of us, people of faith, as people who have their heads buried in the sand, like the proverbial ostrich, that pays no attention to what hits our body, provided our heads are secure in the sand. It doesn't matter whether we are in the midst of a storm or an earthquake. Faith is not a leap in the dark, neither is faith acting like the proverbial ostrich that buries its head in the sand in the midst of a storm. Now, faith is a substance of things hoped for, the assurance of things not seen. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1. We are a people of faith. The Bible does tell us in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 6 that we live by faith and not by sight. We are people of faith. We are not a people of sight. We are not moved. We do not make our decisions or form our convictions based on the circumstances, on the prevailing circumstances. Faith acknowledges that there's a problem. So people of faith are not denying that we are not in a crisis. We are in a crisis, but we are summoning our connection with God to play at this particular point in time where we are saying we will live by faith and not by sight. Yes, people are losing jobs. Yes, companies are closing down. Yes, the economy has been hard hit. Yes, our national debt has skyrocketed. Yes, there's a challenge with our national leadership. However, God has not abdicated His throne. This is not a cancer country. This is not a banana republic. This country has not gone to the dogs. Absolutely not. God rules and reigns in the affairs of this nation. The Bible does tell me that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof and the people that dwell therein. Psalm 24. That includes Kenya. The earth is the Lord's, Kenya is the Lord's, and the people that dwell therein. We belong to God. And because we belong to God and we are related to God by faith, it is about time that you and I lived by faith. This is the guaranteed way of overcoming the prevailing circumstances. See, the Bible is replete of examples of men and women who overcame their prevailing circumstances by summoning the power of faith. What is faith? Faith is the substance of things hoped for. It is the evidence of things not seen. There are people who walk by faith, and there are others who walk by sight. There are people who will not make any move until the prevailing circumstances suggest that it's okay for them to move. But there are people who will make moves because they are convicted of God, because God has said so. Faith is acting on the prompting of God's Spirit. Faith is acting on the promises of God. God has promised to bless this country. Many prophecies have been issued regarding Kenya, that this is a lighthouse to the nations. God has his pulse over this nation. God is not done with Kenya. God has not surrendered us to the forces of demand and supply. God has not surrendered us to the wishes of a few people who want to rob this nation at every opportunity. Absolutely not. God is king over this country, and it's about you. It's about time you and I call on this God, because they that call upon their God will never be disappointed. So the best way to overcome this cloud of hopelessness that is settling over our country is not by giving in to the stories that we are listening to on social media and on mainstream media. The best way to overcome that sense of hopelessness is to remember what God says about this country. You and I cannot live by faith if we are not hearing what God is saying. I appreciate what the analysts are saying, whether they be pundits or armchair commentators. I appreciate what the media is saying. I appreciate what commentators are saying. But I also want to find out, what is God saying about this country? And God says, I know the plans I have for Kenya. They are plans of good and not of evil. They are plans to bless us and to give us an expected end. God has a plan for this country. But having said that, it's about time that we as a country went back to God in prayer and repentance. Could it be that what is happening in our country has been allowed of God to bring us back to a place of faith, where we look up to God and call on Him for intervention? You see, God spoke in Chronicles, 2 Chronicles chapter 7 verse 14, and said, if my people who are called by my name shall humble themselves and turn away from their wicked ways and pray, then will I hear from heaven, I will heal their land, I will forgive their sin. God is more than willing to heal this land. God is more than willing to turn around our country. Our country has made amazing leaps and bounds from a low-income country to a middle-sized economy. When we are growing, we thank God for the growth that we're experiencing financially, irrespective of the challenges that we are faced with. We thank God for the peace that we're enjoying, even in the midst of the confusion that seems to prevail. We thank God for His provision, that you are able to at least have a meal. I know there are others who are suffering, but that you are able to enjoy peace and even have the little food that you're eating is something to thank God for. But I came to encourage us this day that we've been called to live by faith. Faith calls us to live by a higher set of rules, by a higher set of principles. And these principles are given of God. What is God saying about your situation? What is God saying about your business? What is God saying about your life? Do not throw in the towel. Do not call it quits. Do not surrender, because God has a plan for this nation. There is hope for Kenya. This is not the end. We are past our worst times. Kenya will rise up again, and Kenya will shine. Our economy will turn around once again. There will be jobs, there will be money flowing in our economy once again. I am optimistic because I know God has not given up on us as a nation. So my sister, do not give up. My brother, do not give up. Dad, do not give up. Mom, do not give up. Mr. President, do not give up. Parliament, do not give up. Whoever you are, do not give up, because God is not done with Kenya. The earth is the Lord's. Kenya is the Lord's. and the fullness thereof, and the people that dwell therein. Please keep in touch. I'd like to know what you have to say about this conversation, whether there is hope for Kenya. But I am persuaded that there is hope for Kenya when we turn back and we begin to live by faith according to God's promises for this nation. Latch on to the promises of God, because God has an amazing plan for you as a Kenyan. The Lord bless you richly. My name is Patrick Kuchio. This is CITAM Church Online, the Youth Cafe. Please keep engaged on our social media platforms as we continue engaging on this question: is there hope for Kenya?